Hello, everyone. My name is Kate,
And I'm Annie.
and you're listening to Artwise. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another guest episode of Artwise. Today, I have with me Annie, and we are having a really important special episode. I say it's special every time because all the episodes are special, but this is actually a really important topic that in the past 80 episodes of Artwise that are out, we have not tackled yet, which is disabilities in the art industry and how we can, be more accommodating and things that we can do as artists and for artists. So I'm super excited to talk about that. But first, I'm going to let Annie go ahead and introduce herself.
Hi, my name is Annie Shannon. I am an accessible wedding and elopement photographer who specializes in capturing the overarching story of a wedding day in an artistic style, while providing accessibility for people who might need it, family members or the couple themselves.
That is amazing. I'm so excited to talk to you about this because I honestly it's a really important topic, and I'm kind of surprised that it's kind of my fault as the host, but also I'm surprised that a guest hasn't brought this up for an episode topic because it is really important that we talk about it.
Well, I mean, so with accessibility, the only people who talk about it consistently tend to be the people who need it. And
Yeah.
so we, as artists, can take a stand and start providing that for them and asking them and giving them a voice and making it possible for them to be, you know, accommodated.
Yeah. But before we do get into that topic, because it's heavy and there's a lot of questions that I have for you about it. I
Yeah.
did want to ask, nobody gets by these questions. We at least have to know a little bit about your background. So, first question I always ask all the guests on this podcast: how did you begin your journey into art? What got you started with photography, and what other kinds of art do you do?
Yeah. So I grew up in a home with a dad who's super artistic. I mean, acrylic painting, carving. Here, let me show you one. He made this.
Oh, wow.
It's for those who are listening, it is a wood carving of hands and it is so realistic, and one of the hands is putting a ring, like a wedding ring, on the other hand. So, um, it's really cool. So he does that. And then my great grandmother on my mom's side painted, these are watercolor paintings. She painted watercolor paintings behind the ones behind me. And they're depictions of different sceneries that she had gone to on vacation. And so I've been surrounded by art my whole life. And I mean, I grew up making tiny little figurines out of Play Doh because that was something that naturally came to me. Drawing, painting. I didn't like painting because I didn't have as much control.
I'm the
That was
same way. I'm not a painter.
it's I think it's cuz I'm a perfectionist. Or I'm trying to become an excellentist, not be so
Yeah.
perfectionist.
No,
But
yeah, same.
yeah, same. I mean, your digital art is really good, and I don't think I could do that. So,
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I mean everybody takes to art in such drastically different ways, but with like
mhm.
things that are wet, I don't know. It just I can't. I'm like I don't know. I don't. It just doesn't come naturally. I'm like, what is paint? Like it never worked. I've tried all of them. I've had this conversation on this podcast a few times before. I just can't. It's not for
Mhm.
me. I like it for like relaxing time, but if I'm trying to actually make something good, it's just I know it's not going to come out as good as if I like did something either
Mhm.
digital or in like markers or pencils.
I think that we would need to like practice. That's for me. I need to practice the medium and see how I would personally use it and what style I would want to do it, because I think it would be a different style from my drawing style. So, yeah. But, anyways, I grew up with art surrounded. I mean, my dad made me a beta fish costume, and then a flute costume. So, I've always been creative myself with all the ideas. But as I got older, I gravitated towards taking pictures on those disposable cameras at Girl Scouts. And then over time, I mean, I would just see a camera. And the funny thing is, the reason I became a photographer was because I wanted to be a YouTuber. And my cringy 14-year-old or 15-year-old self just, no, no, glad I'm not a YouTuber. Glad that those videos just are hidden on the internet.
Oh my
I'm glad that
gosh.
I'm glad that not very many people saw it.
I feel like everybody wants to be like an influencer now. I mean, well, now, but like back then too. Like my
Yeah,
whole that was like I wanted to do that too. I posted so many funny videos on YouTube. I still post videos on YouTube as an adult. I'm like,
yeah.
it's okay.
I
I
personally,
embarrass myself on TikTok every day, and I do it on purpose, intentionally for my business, and it works well for me. So
your TikTok is phenomenal.
thank
So
you.
I'm so nervous to delve more into that platform, but I know I need to. So you're good, girl. But I don't want to. One thing is, I don't want to be an influencer personally, but I want to have people influenced by ideas and concepts. You
hmm
know, like I don't want to be the person who films their whole life and just shares absolutely everything. So I can be pretty private on some areas of my life, which I'm okay with. I want people to be aware of different things that they don't think about, you know?
Yeah. No, I totally understand. It's definitely social media has changed the world in a very weird way. And I know a lot of people who are like, "Oh, you have to post everything. You have to be authentic." And I don't think that's the move for everyone. I feel like individually, anyone who's listening, we just had a whole conversation about this in the episode that came out last week with Hannah. So if you want to listen to more on that from like a social media manager standpoint who specializes in managing artists specifically, check that out for sure. But
Yeah.
yeah, so it's awesome to hear that you've always been into art. I feel like a lot of artists have creative families and come from a creative upbringing. So it's really nice to
Mm-hmm.
hear that other people have that similar experience. That said, I was wondering if you could talk about your experience traveling and photographing missions overseas and what that was like for you, because I know that's kind of part of your background as well.
Yeah. So, a little bit of background. I became a photographer because I needed to fundraise to be a missionary overseas in Spain. And then when I came home, I had a full fledged photography business. So, and then I went back to missions and then I came back in 2020. So, but one of the things that I feel like a lot of people who end up doing photography and missions fail at, and I want to be loving, but they capture the poverty instead of the culture.
Mm.
They intentionally try and pull on heartstrings instead of inviting people into a relationship with this culture and inviting them into a process of helping this culture thrive. And because the point isn't to get people to donate money just so that they can live. It's a share that Jesus died on the cross, was buried, rose again on the third day. And this is like my personal belief, and that all sin is abolished, like guilt is no longer, that kind of thing. So that's the whole point for me personally, like that should be captured is the relationship, the culture, the way that things are being worked for their good, and not necessarily like making people feel bad for this culture because they don't have the same culture, because that's not how ministry should be. In my perspective, we shouldn't force a culture to be a different culture. And so I went into that with that kind of mindset, but I also had to learn the balance between living in missions and photographing missions, and doing a balance of, okay, I feel convicted to take one or two photos here, and that's it. Not overdoing it, because also overdoing it can remove aspects of a story, because photography is supposed to be a story. And so that's kind of was my process. And I had to learn a lot of the cultural norms, and I became fluent in Spanish, which is great because my husband's family only speaks Spanish. So yeah, that was kind of my experience, is learning to balance the cultures and honor them with photography, and not overwhelming the in the arms of an angel sphere. So yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's what a lot of people think of when they think of that type of photography
Mm-hmm.
is people, really focusing on I don't I don't know if it's right to like say the negatives, but almost yeah, like trying to intentionally like pull on the heartstrings and stuff like that. So that's really cool to hear. I know you have some other experience in the fashion industry, so I was curious, how does that differ from things that you're doing now? And what
Yes.
was your experience in the fashion industry too? Like your background, how did that get started?
Yeah. So I moved back to the United States in 2020. Crazy stuff happened in 2020 for everyone.
Yeah.
But in my case, I didn't have a job because I was a full time missionary and then needed to find something. And weddings weren't happening, elopements were, but you had to be very cautious of all the regulations and everything. So it was 2021, and my best friend, out of the blue, she goes, Annie, come work at me at X company. And I said, wait, what? She said, there's a graphic design position that's open. They're looking for people who have experience. I know that you do some graphic design, but we really need people who can focus on the photography aspect, because we're also doing the photography and we aren't photographers. We have experience in it, but I mean, it'd be so wonderful to have someone who just specializes in the photography, who can focus on that so we can focus on the graphic design. I said, okay, cool. I'll pray about it. I did not want to at first. And then I looked into the position, and I realized that that was something that might work for me personally. And so I applied, and I got rejected. They went with someone else with a little bit more graphic design experience versus photography experience. And they reached out to me when one of their graphic designers needed to go on maternity leave. So I got to a 6-month contract with this company, and there are NDAs, so I can't say a lot of stuff, but I can share some of the typical stuff that's pretty well known. And it was a very interesting experience. I would say humbling, because one has to realize that there are people above you, versus when you work for yourself, um, or for another client, you just have to talk with the client. or for your to yourself about some of the things that need to happen. But in a huge company, there are concepts that have to be approved. So don't ever let a company say that a photographer did something without like permission, because even the photos after the fact have to be approved for usage. But anyways, I had to learn how to be organized, schedule times to be creative, submit my creativeness, then have it either rejected or another person's idea accepted. And then one of the things that was really challenging but really good was learning how to pose a male model in so many different ways to show off a clothing product. And so I really grew in like photographing and capturing different aspects of a garment, but also like different aspects of a personality. And I think it was really fun. But yeah, it's different because it's a little bit more organized, and there is an approval process that has to be done.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of larger companies are like that, but also I've heard some crazy stories from the fashion industry specifically. So I was really curious about that. So that's kind of like a cool experience, and it's nice to be able. I don't know if you think this is nice, but I love doing contract work. I think it's super fun to get a 6 month contract and have like an expiration date, because I tend to get like stuck places if there's
Yeah.
no expiration date. Like I had a corporate graphic design job. I was designing apparel, not apparel, but like t-shirt graphics, not designing apparel. And I knew I didn't want to do it the rest of my life. I was there for 3 years. I didn't think I would be there that long. So I like having,
Yeah.
6 months just to see, it's nice.
I really enjoyed it. I did a lot of product photography, and that was
Mm.
repetitive and posing a belt a certain way and taking for different setting pictures of it, selecting the right ones, submitting it to get approved, those kind of things. That was tedious, but I think what I really liked about it was I had 6 months of income, and I didn't have to worry about taking on a wedding, which what I really like about weddings as a wedding photographer myself and elopements is the job. I mean, you can work with a couple on engagement at bridals, wedding, and after the wedding, like that project is complete. However, they can rehire you and you can rework with the couple for 1 year anniversary photos or maternity photos or newborn photos, which I do on the side, but I don't advertise, which is really fun because I can just capture their life story and be able to be like involved in their lives for a little bit longer than just a wedding. But it has an end term to it once I deliver the wedding gallery.
Yeah, no, that's something I really like about being like a service-based business like that is like much like photography as a graphic designer who has clients. I feel like very similar. Like every single time something develops in the business, I get rehired for like a new project. And it's
Mm-hmm.
cool because not because I'm obviously it's nice to be getting consistent work from clients who love me, but it's also really awesome to see like the growth of people and like the
Mm-hmm.
development in their lives and their businesses. It's just awesome. So I think that's very cool.
Yeah.
So how does the photography and the work doing weddings differ from work that you've done previously when you were a missionary and when you were in the fashion industry? How does that compare?
Well, when I was in missions, I was actually photographing weddings for missionaries at times too.
Oh, wow.
So, because missionaries would get married and they rely on support funding. So, as a way to like donate to them, some of them I would donate like my services as a gift, which is a pretty like time consuming gift, but it was really fun. But I think one of the things with missions was I had to be really present, but also document the story. Whereas I can be present, but I have to document the story in a wedding. Like I have to be both at the same time. So I couldn't just put my camera down and enjoy like just a deep conversation. I had to have my head on a swivel at all times at a wedding. Whereas when I was in missions, I could stop and have a conversation, and it didn't matter if I missed like a sweet moment because there were so many other sweet moments to be had. And I was
Mhm.
having one myself with someone who needed it. And so that's like the difference, I think, with missions and weddings and elopements is just having to be a little bit more active with my eyes and just being like, where is my next shot, God? Where do I need to position myself? Where do I need to be for the next beautiful moment to be captured? Um, and then when it comes to fashion, I learned a lot about organization and prep with it. And so I would say it helped me with the business side of my business and learning, okay, I need to do content creation for myself and show my face and branding and all that stuff. I think the only thing that I can apply from the fashion industry is how I pose the men in the garments that we were photographing. And so and it's really nice because I can just transition that to weddings, and it's been really great because I I can capture a groom and make him feel comfortable, which before I could do it, but it wasn't like the coolest poses. And now I'm like, okay, I know what to do. I know what to do now.
That's awesome. So I do want to talk about accessibility now. So like we are going to pivot a little bit
Yes.
and change the conversation up. So speaking of weddings and elopements, what are some ways that you specifically provide accessibility to people with or people who have family with disabilities when you're photographing weddings and elopements?
Yeah. So, one of the things that I like to do is I like to just kind of observe the family at first. And when I get there, if I have no information, and I've walked into some of these situations blind, that blind isn't like I didn't know what was to be with the family, not actually blind. That's kind of ironic that we're talking about disabilities and that. But I will notice if someone is blind. Okay, are they a family member or a friend? And if they're a friend, then I will make sure that I capture a picture of them and the bride and groom, and I will code the photo that they are in with the bride and groom, and maybe code a couple other photos so that the friend can enjoy a few photos from the wedding by just listening to a description. And I try to be very, how do I say this? Um, Jane Austen type writing with descriptions for certain people, and then very basic for others, depending on what they like. And so that's what I do with people who are blind. With people who have autism or Down syndrome, or who are autistic, or okay, I'm gonna start that over. With people who are autistic or have Down syndrome, I tend to observe how they interact with people at first, see to what level can I personally relate with them? So if some people have a, have an obsession. Some people have an obsession with like Tigger. And so I can talk all about Tigger, which I've done this before. I had a bride's brother who was autistic, and the only thing that made him smile was singing the Tigger song. So behind the camera, I was singing "The Wonderful Thing About Tiggers is I'm the Only One," and he was smiling and getting into the photos and enjoying them. Whereas I've had other situations where the brother wasn't able to like fully understand what was going on, but he was there. And the only way to get him in a photo was with mom and dad there. And I didn't have to do anything. I just had to be like, okay, we're taking a picture. And mom and dad brought him into the photo. That kind of thing. Just being aware of people with different abilities and needs. So if there is a family member on a walker, I'm not going to make them walk half a mile to take family photos, or I'm going to try and find a spot that they can access very easily without walking with their walker or having someone push their wheelchair. It's just little things like that can make a difference. And then one thing that I'm starting this year is I'm starting private sign language lessons. So I want to be able to include family members who don't speak or can't hear, because some people are just not nonverbal. And so being able to sign with them will allow them to have a connection with me, be able to feel comfortable in front of the camera, and I can take their picture and they'll be fine with it. And I've actually had situations where there have been like the bride, it was hailing. It was hailing, and there was a guest who only signed, and the bride and the guests were signing to each other while it was hailing because we couldn't hear a thing. And so we were like, I know some, and so I was able to sign with them and help pose her. But it was great. I loved it. And so I think it just opens up a door also for me to just relate with more people and love more people, which is my goal. Is I want to love people.
Yeah, I feel like that's amazing. And I could only wish that like, just more people in the world would take that initiative because it really to learn a language, okay, that takes some time, but like little things that can be done to make people feel more comfortable and to make people feel more accepted for who they are. I just feel like there's absolutely no reason that as artists we shouldn't be doing, those things. There's no reason for it. So I feel like that's amazing. And also I think I don't know if people forget or they just don't care, or if people do care and just don't talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like everyone, especially like when it comes to weddings and stuff, everybody knows someone with some form of like a disability. Like my
Mm-hmm.
brother has autism. He's on the autism spectrum. And I took a couple years. I mean, I'm by no means fluent, but I did take a couple years of ASL, and I can kind of communicate through ASL,
Mm-hmm.
very probably not well, not fluently, but it's just little
Yeah.
things like that I feel like help people so much more than I think we realize.
Well, I mean, if you think of it, you can just type a message and relate with
That's
them
true.
that way too. But I mean, with your brother, with you personally, have you learned like noticed how like different people interact with him?
Yeah, I mean, it was hard as a kid. We're
Hmm.
I'm like 3 years older than him,
Okay.
and when we were in high school together, that sucked. I think it sucked for both of us. You know, not to like turn this episode into like a bullying episode, but I think both of us got bullied pretty badly in school.
Mm-hmm.
And there, when you're both the target, there's just absolutely nothing that can be done. you
Mm-hmm.
know and he doesn't really like events and stuff like that. Like,
Yeah.
hypothetically, if I were to get married and have a wedding, would he come? Maybe. I don't know. I have no idea. He doesn't really like to go out to stuff like that, especially like if there was more than a certain amount of people. I could
Yeah.
probably bet on him not coming, and like I wouldn't care or take offense to that. I understand completely.
Yeah.
But yeah, it does. People do have very different reactions to him. I feel like the people who are more informed are significantly more kind and not just like, what's wrong with him,
Mm-hmm.
or what's wrong with me. I mean, I don't know. I have I I've seen it all growing up, with him.
Mm-hmm.
He's my younger brother, so he's 20 now and I'm 23. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I'm so sorry that you experienced it. I feel like we, as people, need to do better to try and observe and understand people of different needs and abilities and different cultures as well. I mean, you live in Florida, I live
Mhm.
in Texas. So we, like, as Americans, need to understand that we live in a such culturally diverse and dense location that
Yes.
we're never going to fully understand someone unless we get to know them. And luckily, I was put in, I think it was kind of an example program with people with all different needs and abilities, like little kids, when I was in preschool. And so I was exposed to people with different needs and different ways of doing things. And so I had that understanding growing up, and I feel like we need to do better to introduce our kids to that as well, whenever we have kids. Um, but also introducing our friends to, hey, this is how like some people react, like interact. Like, here's my brother, this is what's going on, or in my case, here's my sister, this is her, this is some of her struggles, and she's not lazy because of it. That kind of thing, because my sister has a diagnosed disability as well, and so creating space for her and all that. And so yeah.
Yeah. I think people too, there's a lot of people who think that all disabilities you can see them too, which is it can be
Mm-hmm.
frustrating because a lot of in fact, I would probably argue most disabilities are completely invisible. Like you wouldn't
Uh-huh.
know. So, I just learning honestly, I feel like it should be normal to learn about, I mean, like I in school, in high school and in college, I took a lot of like abnormal psychology classes and just a lot of
Mm-hmm.
different like medical courses, just because some of them were required and some of them I was just interested in learning. And there are so many things that I was like, I didn't even know about that. And
Yeah.
then meeting people through my podcast, meeting people through my life, I've met so many people with like just different like you said, different needs. And it's just like, wow, I wish that this was like more common to like learn these things, because as like a young person in school, like it's not really talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And then when you grow as like an artist, as like a neurotypical, I don't know if I'm neurotypical, honestly, I'm probably not, but
I'm most likely neurodivergent, knowing
yeah,
myself.
yeah, obviously I have not. I mean, I've seen like a psychiatrist and he was like, you should probably get screened, and I was like, I think I'm good. I don't really need a label or anything. I'm just a little weird. But artists creative problems. But no, I feel like I don't know. It should be more openly talked about and more regular, and I feel like if we make it like a part of normal conversation. Because in some, I feel like people turn things like taboo that really shouldn't be, like
Mm-hmm.
not just with disabilities, but with like a I could name a million things that like people like say you quote unquote like shouldn't talk about. Like you shouldn't talk about how much money you're making, you shouldn't talk about, and it's just like, for what? Like who are we? Like we're not trying to offend anybody, we're literally just trying to like learn things for ourselves so that we can
Yeah,
make other people have like a better, happier life. Like there shouldn't be anything wrong with that.
I know. And I think our culture is shifting.
Mm-hmm.
However, we're still so far behind to
Yeah.
what we should be. But it's all about loving others. And I mean, with your case of you don't know if your brother would come to your wedding, have you thought of having a quiet room so that he can like wait until the ceremony, go see the ceremony, and then leave? But he can wait until the ceremony in a room away from people.
Honestly, I haven't even thought about getting married. That when I said that was a hypothetical situation, I mean, I honestly think I may never get married, and I kind of don't have an interest in getting married either.
Yeah.
I know, I think he did come, my cousin got married in February of last year,
Uh-huh.
and I think he was there. He was at least there for a little bit. He might have left early, but
That's okay.
her wedding was literally, it was in my yard. I lived on my aunt's property in a
Uh-huh.
shed.
Oh, that's
And
fun.
yeah, so she had the wedding here like in her yard. She has like a big, like a few acres, like super nice yard. And so,
Oh, that's fun.
you know, yeah, it's cool when it's like also like when you're in a setting that's like familiar and safe too. I
Yeah.
think I'm pretty sure he did. Yeah, he was there. I have pictures with him. Yeah, he was definitely there. But,
Yeah.
I mean, if I were to get married, I think I'd want to get married at like the aquarium or something. And I don't know. I mean, I like the aquarium. I think the
I
aquarium's
think
like a
that's so fun. That's so fun. The lighting, you have to have someone who can do that lighting with photography. So evaluate portfolios before doing
yeah.
it. But I mean, I really want to do an aquarium shoot so I can show that I can do that kind of stuff. But
Yeah, the
yeah,
Tampa aquarium does weddings. I'm like, ooh, if I'm ever like rich for whatever reason, that would be cool. And then but I don't have anybody to get married to. I could like marry myself. Is that weird? Has anyone done that
there's a
before?
whole movie about that. There's a whole movie about a woman who got married to herself. It's quite a trip.
The ultimate form of self-love. Like, I don't know, I think that's really cool. That's a cool idea. I'll have to keep that in my back pocket.
Well, I don't think you can legally do it.
What? Oh, well, I can have a party. If I pay an aquarium money and I'm like, I have a wedding, who's getting married? Me to myself. I feel like they'd be like, okay, write me a check. Like, whatever.
It'd be fun to photograph just the bridals. Just bridals, a wedding just of just bridals and just the bride, and then all the friends and family having fun.
Yeah.
And yeah,
Yeah, no. So back to what you were saying earlier, though, I did want to ask. So you talked about coding some of your images.
with how to so how would you code a digital image? First of all, on Instagram, you have this thing called, let me double check. English. Um so when you post, you can, let's just, next. Sorry about that. You can edit this part out.
You're good.
Okay. So on, where'd it go?
I'm probably gonna edit a lot of this episode just because, like, I don't know, the
Yeah.
cats, and then also like me probably saying something dumb.
And I mean, you could totally edit if you feel like it's not okay to even mention the the thing that you shouldn't mention for hard of hearing. You can edit that out too. I don't know if that's
Yeah,
okay to say. I don't know.
I don't know
If you,
either. Just to be
even if it's
safe, I probably will.
yeah. Okay. So you could just say like it's hard of hearing. and visually impaired. There we go. Okay, so when you want to edit, sorry, in English. When you want to have like descriptive text behind an image that you post on Instagram, you're going to make an Instagram post and then you're going to hit advanced settings. It's all the way at the bottom right now. It should be at the top, or they should have accessibility right alt text as like one of the things that you can do right off the bat instead of having to click things. But you hit right alt text and you're going to describe your image. Now, if it is a painting, then you can say painting, but it's already going to say graphic of. So, or graphic, and then it's going to display whatever description you have behind it. They removed like the automatic like accessibility to it a while back because of some laws or something, which it was like with the facial recognition and everything. So if you post a picture of someone, you can say, let's say there's a picture of you and me, Kait. A picture of Kait and Annie in a forest with Kait's paintings being held up. And the painting on the left is of her dryads. I think that's one of the paintings that you've done. You've done dryads, I think, like the tree people.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
yeah, and the painting on the right is of her sunflowers with faces, that kind of thing. And so people, when they are visually impaired, will be able to hear what that is and be like, oh my goodness, I know exactly. And I feel related to this person. Like, I like the idea that flowers have faces, that kind of thing. And I mean, there are people who are blind who have not always been blind. And so you need to keep that in account. So, like, some people who are blind know what color looks like. And so you can talk about the color or the shape of a dress because they can feel things too. You can talk about glitter and texture and all that in your description. So that's one way, is you go into the alt text on Instagram and Facebook. And I think there is something on TikTok. I could be wrong. You could also just do hashtag alt text or hashtag accessibility in the comment section and write the description there. I see a lot of people who advocate for accessibility just do it in their description, so that when people are done reading the description, that's when they hear the description of what the video is on their reel or of what the photo is. So that's one thing. And then in order to do it so you can have it coded for your website, is Squarespace has it where you can do that, or you can actually go in to the metadata. And if you aren't doing metadata already, I would recommend going ahead and doing metadata, making sure you put your copyright info at the very least. So like you would do Kait Art as like your copyright in that, and you would just put your first and last name as like who the copyright belongs to, or you could do your LLC or whatever. And then that is the rights to the thing. But in there it says image description, and so you can write your image description in that, and then when you upload it to your website, it will automatically read it, or to Etsy, I think. But another thing is, if you're selling a product, I think legally you have to share the dimensions of it on your store. I'm pretty sure that's a thing. So you have to share the dimensions of your product that you're selling if it's a physical product. But if you're selling a yellow hat with a design, why not write in as like part of the description, like yellow hat with golden bird inlaid on an embroidery paisley or embroidered paisley or something like that. so that someone who is visually impaired, who's looking for a yellow hat, can find it and be like, oh, I like the description of this. I really want this hat and purchase it, because a lot of even fashion isn't accessible to them. Like when it comes to a small business, because small businesses don't have the resources to know that, well, don't always have the resources to know that creating accessibility is great. And I mean, there's a company, I think it's called Two Blind Brothers, who are two blind brothers, and they have a fashion company, and they send you something and you don't know what color it is or whatever, and it teaches you like what the experience is for a blind person to get something, like get an item of clothing. They have to trust someone else to describe it to them. So what better way than the artist to describe it to them?
That's awesome. I honestly, I didn't know that that was so like accessible to be able to do that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I just like didn't know that you could go into like on Instagram and through like other like Squarespace and Etsy and stuff. Like I had no idea that was even an
Mm-hmm.
option.
I'm not sure about Etsy, but I
Okay.
think but I think in the description you could even write the product description,
Mhm.
and it also helps with your searchability, and it helps with your Google searchability if you have it on your website. Like
That's true.
have the description on your website, helps with the Google searchability. It's great.
That's so true. So I do want to ask. I think we pretty much covered a lot of ways that we can make art more inclusive for people with disabilities. I don't know if you have any additional examples of different ways that we as artists can be more accommodating that we haven't already talked about.
Yeah, I have a few. Okay,
Okay.
so I want you to close your eyes real quick. Whoever's
Okay.
listening, if you're driving, do not do that. You can feel things, right? You can feel the clothes on your skin, your hands. You can probably, if you have headphones on, you can feel those in your ears. Okay, what can you smell? Maybe you smell some food that you've cooked, or the sweet smell of perfume that you have put on. And then what can you hear? Maybe you hear the birds outside chirping, you hear this podcast, those kind of things. And I mean, if you have like a really big speaker, you can feel the vibration on the ground. So, opening your eyes, that's what someone who's blind experiences, is they can feel textures, they can smell, they can hear. And so when you're creating art, my challenge to you is to think of the different senses that you can talk to. Even if it is writing a description, that's great. But if you're doing a painting, maybe doing a tactile painting once, and making it like that people can feel it, and maybe you even like cut the brush, like the brush bristles, and put it in the paint so they can feel the brush bristles or whatever, as like part of the painting or something. um, or like using different materials to create different textures. um, making your art have a scent. So what kind of scent would you want people to smell? So if it's like of a forest, maybe having like a pine thing behind it so that people can smell pine, or having like pine on the what frame on the frame, and then people can smell pine and hear the description of it. I've heard that people who are blind really like Christmas because there's a lot of Christmassy smells. So they've got like fruits and pine and cider smells, those kind of things. And then sound. So if you are a music artist, where is your bass? Where is your beat? Because someone who is deaf can feel that. And it actually, like, a lot of people who are deaf will put their headphones on and put it up on blast, and they can feel it. and they just love that sensation. So yeah, not everyone does that, but I know some people who do and they love it.
Yeah, that's a really that's a cool little like exercise. I love that. Those I honestly I'm the first thing that I thought of too is I see these on TikTok all the time and I want to try so bad. I want to try this. And I'm not even a painter, but the people that like cover the canvas in plaster and use like those they're almost like little rake things to make like the textured stuff and like
Yeah,
puffy paint too. I love puffy paint. Puffy paint
I
reminds
think,
me of my childhood. My dad always used to paint with puffy paint. So I don't know why he
yeah.
doesn't do it anymore. He should, but he used
My
to use
dad
puffy
will
paint.
my dad will incorporate something like that every so often in his art pieces. I mean, the man carves, so you can feel the edges and everything.
Yeah, just this morning I saw a TikTok of somebody basically just coating their canvas in plaster and using I wish I had one like on hand. I feel like I usually have everything within reach, but I feel like it's in my living room. But they're like you can literally use like a comb and just make like texture into the plaster and then it'll dry like that. Or even oh
Yep.
my gosh, those people that make like the cereal bowls
Mm-hmm.
or like the fake cakes out of like I think they use plaster too because it looks like icing.
Yeah,
That's so cool. I think that's awesome.
I think
Awesome
it's really cool.
ways to just
And
incorporate texture too. It like
mhm.
it's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard of like people just creating the most like creative, I guess, paintings with just so many different textures that you can literally feel the smoothness of the water and then like the texture of the grass and everything. And I just think it's so fun. And what an experience for someone who is blind, like marketing that for someone who's blind or doing a custom painting. I think that'd be really cool, you know?
Yeah, that would be really cool. I and honestly, I'm surprised that I haven't come across that kind of marketing for that purpose with artists. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's like my algorithm or something,
Well,
I don't know.
art is like so visual to the person who can see it.
Yes.
And so we as people who are visual don't have to think about something that's not visual.
Yeah.
And we have to pivot and think of something else. So, like we have to think outside of ourselves, think of other people, think of how to love someone who can't relate on like every level, but they can relate on some level because art is also emotional. So how can we share this emotion with someone who can't see it?
Right. Yeah, that's amazing. Those are really see, and I wouldn't have thought of that. But now I almost like that gives me so many ideas to just for creating like incorporating smell into a
Mm-hmm.
like a work of art is just so like it's such an interesting idea and I feel like honestly I don't know if museums I mean I'm sure some of them do because some art museums have really cool like what is it called? They're like interactive, like almost like you're stepping into the works.
Mm-hmm.
Like
We have
I've
that
been
in
to
Dallas.
yeah, I've been to a few of them. I would like to go to more, honestly,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't know that I've experienced like a what is it called? Oh, like an installation. I don't know that I've experienced something like an installation or something that incorporated smell, but I feel like that would be so much more interesting too.
I mean,
Even
yeah. I mean, even with like your branding, if you
mhm.
can find a candle that reminds you of that brand and you like send a branded like a branding kit or something to them, you can incorporate that little candle as a gift and you can tell them, when I smell this candle, I think of y'all, your brand. I think
Yes.
that'd be so cool for like them to find a signature scent to have on hand, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm all for sending like branding clients gifts like that at the end of our process. I feel like it's so nice, and so
Mm-hmm.
amazing. We are coming up on an hour though, so I had two more questions. Like hopefully we
Yes.
can run through them, but they're important. So I did want to ask if you had any resources that you can give our listeners to help inform themselves so that the art community as a whole can learn to be more accommodating for people with disabilities. If you have any resources that are good for just learning.
Yes. Okay. So I'm still trying to find resources myself so I can learn and expand my knowledge. But what I found is looking up the hashtag ally, A11Y, on Instagram and TikTok. You can come across so many creators who are creating different things talking about accessibility. And then also hashtag accessibility, hashtag enterabled couples, and you can learn about their lives because you want to learn from people who are also experiencing like their life with blindness, or who are hard of hearing, or who are autistic. You want to hear their perspectives and hear what would make it easier for them. Another person I think would be great is Molly Burke. She is blind. However, she loves makeup and fashion. And so, and because it makes her feel good. And so you can learn so much about like her world and how she sees the world and how you can make it artistic, because she seems very artistic and she can't see, but she's so cool and I love her, and I really want to meet her someday. And then Corey Lee is a good one. He is a adventurer who's in a wheelchair, and so he talks about different accessible places to go. So if you are planning to do like a exhibit and wanting to have it accessible to people in wheelchairs, then you can follow his page and he'll talk about things that they have, and you'll learn, okay, I need to keep an eye out for ramps, or I need to keep an eye out for space when it comes to a wheelchair, that kind of thing.
All right, awesome. So I'm gonna try to include links to that in the description as well. But my last question for you is that, and this is, nobody gets through the episode without getting asked this as a guest. So that's why it's always right there at the end. My question is, what advice would you give your younger self regarding your career? Is there anything that you would have avoided or done sooner or done maybe differently?
I would say don't pressure yourself. Don't don't rush things. Enjoy the process and seek education. Seek knowledge. Seek wisdom. If you find someone who's reputable, learn from them. Learn what they have. There are so many free podcasts out there. Um, I mean, this is a good resource to learn about different mediums of art and different artists, and maybe you can connect with someone who educates on something. But yeah, learn and don't have too much pressure on yourself to have all the clients you need to be full time, or just to be at a certain level in your art process.
That's amazing. I love that. Well, this episode has been super informative. I feel like it's super important. I'm so glad that I we were able to talk about it on Artwise. I'm excited for our listeners to hear it. I do want to pass the torch over to you for the end of the episode so that you can talk about all of your own stuff and do your self promo and promote your business and literally anything else that you have to promote. So I'm gonna give you the floor, and then we'll wrap it up.
Okay, so I am a wedding and elopement photographer, and I love serving artists and creating things with artists. So, if you know of someone who's getting married, or if you're getting married yourself, I am based in the DFW area, and I'm taking 3 weddings that are outside of Texas. So, if you want to work with me, that'd be great. And then you can find me at AnnieShannon.co. And then I also have an Instagram. You can follow me on there. But also, I think it'll be out by now, but I'm creating a podcast called The Wedding Gap, and we will be talking about accessibility in the wedding sphere. So, all things about accessibility. So, if this was interesting to you, hop on over there, listen to some of my episodes with some guests potentially to learn more about how to make weddings accessible, but also wedding planning in general. Just, I think that's kind of what it'll be about. And so, yeah,
All right. Is there anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
I think we're good, other than thank you so much. Your podcast is great. If you haven't
Thank
listened
you.
to her history episodes, do it. Also listen to other guests because they're incredible. I think those are underrated and they need to be like really paid attention to because you can learn so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Annie, for coming on. This episode was so important. Like, I was so excited to talk about it. And I am really, really happy that I got the chance to have you on my podcast as a guest.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. And to everybody who's listening, who made it this far, thank you so much for listening and for being here. The support means so much. I am going to create a Patreon. Well, at the time I'm saying this, the Patreon will exist for sure. But by the time we're recording this in January, so I haven't made it yet. But it will exist. So if you want to support us on Patreon, the link to all the podcast support links will be down below. We're on Instagram at Artwise Podcast, and we do have Artwise Podcast merch. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, there's links down below. Or if you want to be a guest on the podcast, also down below. But again, thank you so much, Annie, for coming on. And thank you to everybody who listened this week. And I will see all of you guys again next Tuesday. Bye, everyone.
Bye.